Would you consider yourself a high-level entrepreneur? Now, most likely, if you're listening to this, you definitely are. And what I've heard over and over and over again is it's hard to find like-minded people that are like that too. Again, I'm from Maine, so I totally understand how difficult it can be. Thank goodness I have an amazing online community, so I know tons of them. And that is exactly why we are starting this brand new mastermind group with high-level, like-minded entrepreneurs, the ones that you can go alongside with that will help move you to the next level, let alone with kick butt coaching from me, because I like to slap you around, both on focus and on strategy. So if you're looking to double or triple this year, which I know most of you are, I want you to go ahead and apply and see if it's a good fit for you. I will totally tell you if it's not and if I wouldn't do it if I were you. But go to eventualmillionaire.com/apply. We are looking for amazing, like-minded entrepreneurs. My previous mastermind members have told me it is life changing. So take the time today, fill out the very quick application, and we'll see if it's a fit. Take care.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to the Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jamie Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I am Jamie Masters, and today on the show, I have been waiting to have Judy Robinett. You can find her at judyrobinett.com. She just came out with Crack the Funding Code. Her other book is all about networking and how to be a power connector. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I had to stop you in advance because we were going down paths of wonderful information, and I was like, let's record first.
Yes.
So what I love about you in general is you took the networking and the power connecting thing and leveled it up times a million. And I thought I was good at connecting, but reading your book and knowing the true ways to do it was insightful. So I want to start there before I get into cracking the funding code. So can you tell us a little bit about the premise of that book and how your network made such a huge difference to you?
Yeah. So, I was in the corporate world and I saw everybody else getting promoted and I couldn't quite figure out what the deal was. And I figured out that rather than the org chart, there was this power network of people, and actually research bears it out. It's 5% of people in an organization really have the power. But I had been so shy and bullied, I actually went and got the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And when I started saying hello and talking to people, and got a little bit out of my comfort zone, then that just really blasted me up. And one of the things that happened was I started getting into a socioeconomic level I'd never been in. I'd never met a millionaire. Now I just got introduced to yet another woman billionaire. And I found out that everybody's just like us. And as long as you're alive, you've got a problem. And your problem is somebody else's solution. And so that really took the fear from me. And, you can help add value just by caring or listening, but providing a contact, doing whatever. And so the first book was really helping people understand that there's no lack of resources. There's 7.4 billion people, 279 trillion in private global wealth. That's the number one pot of money people go to find funding for their startups. Information doubling all the time, endless ideas. But I found most people were in the wrong room. And so I took what I had learned from being the bullied kid that grew up in Idaho and went to the same high school as Napoleon Dynamite to help other, women particularly. And minorities, because it's just harder. It honestly is just harder. And, I'm 65. I used to think when I was your age, Jamie, that we wouldn't have these problems. We still do.
Okay, so I so appreciate your story is a lot similar to mine, especially small town gal in Maine and super introvert.
Oh my gosh.
Didn't want to talk to anybody. I turn bright red when I get nervous. Yeah. So reading your whole story about how you cultivated that. So give us a couple of tips of advice, especially for the people that are trying to get better at networking, but it's kind of scary and getting out of your comfort zone. Can we start there first?
Sure. So I would find somebody that you could be their wingman. Find somebody you already know who's a connector. The second thing is be careful what groups you go to. Probably 95% are a waste of time, all these networking events. And so if you go to a curated group that has people that can help you, the resources that you need, then you can spend, 45 minutes, an hour, meet 10 high quality people. And so that saves the time of having to network. People say, how much do you network? And I don't really. I go to high-end kind of groups. So, for instance, all of your listeners who are in the growth stage of their business. A good organization to go visit is the Association of Corporate Growth, AGC.
Oh.
And this is all over the world. And you go and you can go as a visitor, and it's all CXO people. And so, you could educate yourself, and I'm happy to provide some lists to people. But the people flock like chickens. I've got 14 pet hens in my backyard.
Do we really?
and so think about what it is you need. Where do those people hang out, and how do I get there? And then the other point I just want to make quickly is it is so important to talk to strangers. And research shows we only talk to strangers 2% of the time. It's like, oh my gosh, I've met billionaires hiking in Park City.
Seriously. And we're told as kids not to talk to strangers though.
Strangers danger. And you know what? The truth is it's your neighbors, your family that, rape, murder, plunder, the statistics show. Right. But the reality is, if you, as Einstein said, decide, is this a good universe? And you realize most of the people out there are good human beings, 95%. So 5% are that dark triad of Machiavellian, sociopath, narcissistic. And so those people you avoid. But if you just do little tiny baby steps, I mean, I made it a game at one point to see if I could talk to anybody. And so I said to a friend of mine that was pulling up in the restaurant, whoever pulls up next to us, I'm going to figure out how to talk to him. Well, I look, and it turned out they had Idaho plates. And so I got out, I said, oh, I used to live in Idaho. Where do you live? And I made it a fun game. And if you realize all of us want to be cared, all of us like being supportive. So with strangers, if you give them a compliment, men love to hear about how nice their watch, their shoes, their suit looks. Takes a lot of effort to look good. And then the other thing is, ask for directions, for help, ask a good question. And those are easy ask, and it's easy to do. And what I found is as soon as I did a few of those things, it was like, oh my gosh, people are nice. People do want to talk to me. And that has resulted in me being on boards with, Mark Cuban, and being invited to the White House to fintech conferences. And I literally was absolutely nobody, Jamie. And I found out being generous and going in that you focus on the other person. Don't worry about you. Just focus on pretend they're your best friend. And that will open the doors and provide relationships, and it will set you apart in a huge way that people will remember you.
You just said my name, and I love you more because I noticed you said my name. And I know that's another tactic. So I love these pieces, and especially making it more of a game and not, my mom will talk to anybody to the detriment of like, we have to go now, Mom. I know you just met a new friend, but we have to go. And my dad's the exact opposite. And so growing up with both sides has sort of been an interesting thing. So I can go up and meet people, but then I don't know what to do to cultivate. So do you have any tips? Don't get me wrong. I have lots of friends. But how do you, especially in business, how do you sort of lean towards the business side and actually ask for what you want and go after some of that stuff too? Because I feel like the making friend part especially for females that I know, is a little easier. We can make friends. And then when it comes to actually cultivating relationships and asking in business stuff, it's like,
Yeah. Well, if you've got a good match, if you know somebody that needs financing and you happen to know someone who has financing, everybody's happy. There's absolutely no fear in that equation. So if you can figure out how to add value. So initially when I meet people, I will say, what are you working on now? Or what's your favorite project? And I say, is there anything I could help you with? And I do. I mean, literally, Jamie, after we get through with this, I'm going to say, how can I help you? Whether it's a project, growing your company, getting some more exposure.
Thanks for the prep. I'm going to have to think about that before you actually ask me later. Appreciate it. So when you do that, though, so I love that you do that. And a lot of people do that and then don't follow up, right? How do you keep track of all the things because that means you're getting asked a bazillion things. Does that make sense? And how do you keep track of all that stuff and who to help?
Yeah, so I don't get asked bazillion of things. I'm careful with the people I meet, the groups that I go to.
Okay.
And you can feel if there's a chemistry between people. And if there is, and this is a person you think I'd like to have in my network, and we're maybe on the same level, or maybe this person's a little higher than me, And then your number one goal is to build a relationship. So you want the second date. So initially, you're not going to say, don't you want to put $1 million into my startup? No, they're not. No one invests in you unless they know you, like you, and trust you. So your first goal is just build a relationship. You only need 25 people, Jamie. You can do anything. I mean, literally, if you have a diverse, robust, deep network, you can make anything happen with 25 people. I had a guy in Utah that called me, and he's a pretty famous VC guy, and he said, Judy, I've got 40,000 people in my Excel worksheet, and I'm sending him Christmas cards every year. And I said, how many of those people have ever helped you? And he said 10. Well, that's it. Just because someone will help you doesn't mean they will. So you look for a level of kindness and caring. You don't want one of those sociopathic, murderers. And the second thing is some level of competence. But the third thing I look for is generosity. And indeed, just because someone can help you doesn't mean they will. And so initially, you want to vet that person, make sure you feel good in your heart and your head and your gut. So, one of my favorite quotes by Oprah is, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And so you just realize, I have people often write down who they currently have, like the top 25 people in the network, and then do a little bit of analysis. Do you have people you could call if you need funding? Do you have people you can call if you want to get on a TV show? And so I do follow up. So I will follow up the same day on LinkedIn, invite. I will make sure in that conversation that I have found out, what they're interested in. I will try to find an article, think of a person I could introduce them to, do something that quickly adds value. And it's a powerful way. It's like the eagles on the thermals. It literally just pulls you up and up. And then one day you kind of, I was in Belgrade over the holidays for 11 days, and I got invited to the Royal Palace for dinner. And there were 6 of us, and I'm sitting by Prince Alexander, watching very carefully which utensil he picked up.
Seriously, no
looking
pressure.
Around the walls of millions of dollars of artwork, going, how did this happen? Well, I can track it exactly back to how it happened. I helped. A woman asked me to go on a diplomatic mission to Belgrade to help them with their entrepreneurial stuff, and I've done that all over the world. And initially I thought, who would want to go to Belgrade? And then Dee, who you met briefly, said to me, oh, come on, Judy, you can probably add value, help them, and you'll probably have a good time. So Kevin Harrington of Shark Tank fame is a good friend of mine. He said, oh, Judy, if you're going, I want you to meet this guy that I have been looking at investing in his company. Tell me, is he a good guy? And tell me, is his business model solid? Is he investable? Well, I met this great, great guy. I now own part of his company. We have offices in Rockefeller Plaza. And he's the one that said, would you like to go to the Royal Palace for dinner? And so nothing happens without people, nothing. And if you get people to kind of track back, or you watch what happens, it turns into magic. It really does.
I love that you said magic, because that's stuff that money can't buy. And like, you can't be like, oh, I'm going to pay a whole bunch of money because I want to be invited to the thing. Like, it's all in who you know. And there's so many pieces I want to unpack about what you just said. So the very, very first piece you talked about was higher levels. So I know we don't talk about that very much, right? We're like, I'm down here and you're up there. How do we navigate the higher levels, and how to help and really cultivate that?
Yeah, so, the secret really is realizing everybody needs help. So last year I was at Pebble Beach, got introduced to one of the foremost VCs in the nation. And I said to him, after he told me a little bit about him, and I told him a little bit about me, nothing compared to him, and I said to him, is there anything I could help you with? And he said, I'm just having the worst time trying to find a couple of speakers for this conference on AI, artificial intelligence. I said, done. I did the same thing with Mark Burnett, who's now the CEO of MGM. And that will result in you getting emails and phone calls back the same day. I mean, when it came out that Mark Burnett was the new CEO of MGM, I wrote a short little email, congratulations to you and Roma Downey, his wife. And less than 30 minutes later, he wrote back and said, thank you, Judy. So that shows, and it's based on that quality, the depth of that relationship.
See, and it's the depth. So I call them connection threads. I'm always looking to deepen the relationship, whether it be giving value or reconnecting or being human to human instead of just mass email, because I feel like we don't have that. How do you deepen? How do you know how the level of depth that you are before you can ask something?
How do you know the level? So if you have developed a good relationship with someone, and they know you, like you, and trust you, you can certainly ask. And if you get a no, you just say next and go to the next person. But so there's different levels of the ask. Like and the harder ones are probably, are you interested in funding my company? Do you know about a JV contract? But you can do it pretty easily by saying, I've shared with you about my company. We're going to be doing a Series A round. 2 magic questions. Number 1, what other ideas do you have for me?
Ooh.
Number 2, who else do you know I should talk to?
That seems so much softer.
Instance, yes, so much softer. And that's different than the punch to the head, like, give me $1 million. And it gives them a way to save face. You don't know. Maybe they've got the money, maybe they don't. Mm-hmm. And you can also say, would you mind looking at my pitch deck? Or could I run through this with you? I'm going to be meeting with a family office or whatever. People love to give advice. There's a fellow in Salt Lake, Adam Slovic, who did a $1 billion exit. He will meet with any entrepreneur as long as they buy him lunch, and he'll spend 2 hours. He'll spend 2 hours going through your business model, asking you questions, thinking about assumptions. And most of these people love doing that. So the angel investors, they all love to coach. They love to be helpful.
That's restores faith in humanity, right? Of people that actually have stuff they really want to, because in the online world that we live in, a lot of times people are so guarded, like, I'm too cool for you, like, don't pick my brain. And that's where I feel like people have a hard time asking now. I mean, I have a hard time asking from amazing humans going, oh, I don't want to bug you. I don't know if our relationship is deep enough. So how do you start on that? Especially like if you're somebody that's going through and needing funding, and you're going through and I want to ask, I want to be that person that, like, in the quote in your background, I love that. How do you just like pave the way so that way you can actually get funding or get the things that you need?
Yeah. So, number 1, it is build the relationships before you need them. I'll have people call me and they're frantically, they're, down to 6 months of cash, their burn rate's too high, they've got to find funding, and they don't know anybody. Now that's a problem. If you've developed, nurtured, found out some of those, it's really pretty simple. It's not simplistic, but simple. And I go through this a lot in my book. There's 300 angel groups in the United States, equally from north to south to west to east. But the secret is 75% of them only invest in the state they're in. So you can Google Maine angel groups or Idaho angel groups. There's angel groups in every city. Every, kind of major city. There certainly are in the bigger cities and those rural places we're from. And you can get online. And the one I tell people to go look at is the New York Angels. Arguably, I think the best angel group in the world. I mean, last time I was there, I think I counted 6 billionaires in the room, including Esther Dyson. And so a little knowledge will take you a very far way. So if you've done your homework, you've looked at this, you've looked at the application process, I will usually tell people, meet with an entrepreneur who's been successful, ask them for some advice to, look at the pitch deck. And at that point, when you've got really good information back and you've overcome barriers or hurdles, and you have put such a nice bow on your value proposition package, like you've got a Wilson Sonsini, a top tier law firm, you've got a top, maybe a fractional CFO, a couple of top board members, then that increases the credibility around you and that company. So it makes it easier for them to say, yes, I'll take a meeting. So the one thing to realize, Jamie, is all of the investors, their number one problem is finding a good deal. That's their problem.
Everybody thinks that's crazy on the other side. Exactly. So we see Shark Tank and they're like, oh, everybody's just trying to pitch their idea. Well, good ideas are very different than random pitches, right? In general.
Well, yeah. So I mentioned I was on a panel with Mark Cuban, and at that event, we were trying to increase minorities that were on Shark Tank with my friend, Dr. Rodney Sampson. And we had dinner, and I was sitting to the TV producer. I turned to him and I said, dude, most of these deals like really suck. And he turned to me and he said, well, Judy, it's entertainment first. So, I put my little tail between my legs and, but, so that probably isn't the most optimal place, but you can certainly go to pitch events at your local college, at universities. They have conferences all over the place. If you just Google, you'll be overwhelmed with the number of investors. The other thing is, if you find whoever you hire as a law firm, they need to be able to open doors for you. They need to have some gravitas. So a lawyer, everybody can do a contract. Everybody can't open the doors for you or has the expertise in that industry. So all of this I've been talking about is really packaging the deal. And Howard Stevenson, who was known as the father of entrepreneurism at Harvard, wrote just this terrific little book that teaches investors what to look for in deals. And I can send that for you for your show notes. And he said there's two ways that you can position yourself as a high potential deal. The first one is be very clear on your exit, and it turns out those guys want their money back. And the second, yeah. And the second one is mitigate risk as viewed by the investor. So many of the pitches I see, they're so into their Kool-Aid, their product, and we're going to have billions of dollars, and their customer at that point is the investor. And so looking at it through the investor's eyes, and there's always giveaway phrases that show me people are an amateur. So I had a guy day before yesterday write to me, and he said, Judy, I'm working with this company that has a cure for Parkinson's for hand tremors. And I wrote back and I said, please don't use the word cure. You'll appear as an amateur. So he wrote back to me and defined the word cure out of the dictionary. And I wrote to him and I said, I can tell you how investors define it, snake oil.
Hopefully he takes that to heart. My goodness. Right? But what's so interesting is that it's the nuances of being in the industry as long as you have that make you understand language, make you understand and intuitively know certain things. Like this book, just so everybody is very clear, is insanely detailed with things that are actually value. No offense to other people that write books, but a lot of it is like generalizations of like, this is how it's supposed to be. And you like break it down, which is really, really helpful. And because you've been in it for so long. So when somebody's getting into this, especially the people that are listening right now, a lot of them have bootstrap businesses. They're not like oh my gosh, I want to have a $5 million company and I'm starting from zero right now. So the people that have businesses that are quote unquote successful, maybe make six figures, should they even be thinking about funding if they want to grow? Do they need an exit? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So you always want to have those relationships in your back pocket because who knows, maybe you suddenly get a contract out of Europe and you need instantly $100 million in inventory or whatever. So, and most companies along their growth path, they're going to need money. Now, if you're successful, you can get bank loans. And that's another thing. You should go to the SBA and SCORE, the Small Business Development Center. There's one in every county. It's free, really good information. And so, yes, I would always have those people because at some point, you probably are going to need funding. If not, that's great, but most companies do. And so I would have developed a relationship with the banker, with the local angel group. I would find out the local family offices around you. 70% of them now are investing in startups, early stage companies.
Wow.
And so, and there is no lack of money, 279 trillion. There's no lack of money. And it really is getting in the right room. And it's, the reason I had to do this book is I was so frustrated going around the world globally and meeting people who had arguably great business ideas and could not figure out how to get funded. And some of them had fallen in with the bad actors, made lots of promises, just pay us $10,000, we'll get you funded. But most of them just didn't understand, Einstein said, if you're going to play the game, you better know the rules. And it's kind of an interesting industry, and a lot of them have kept private because they don't want everybody walking up, hey, don't you want to give me $1 million? And I wanted to make it easy for people to see a pathway that works. So that's the nut.
Well, and it's so neat. I've heard so many horror stories. I haven't raised. I've worked with clients that have, and I've heard horror stories from friends of mine that have literally spent so much time and effort, years even, going through and it feels like they're turning their way away from their business to go learn this skill set to try and figure out this whole thing, which is a totally separate line, but then they sort of negate the business. And so it's like this double-edged sword of trying to go, well, I'm going after funding, but we also have to pay attention to this, and they're split. And so the horror stories of business didn't grow, or we couldn't get funding, or, things fell through, is just makes a lot of people go, okay, never mind, back away.
Yep. Yeah. And that's why you always need a plan A, plan B, plan C. And that's why I always say it's important to develop those relationships, because you never know, what may be happening. I recently, I do some work with Walmart and different folks, and a person that I'd worked with, they said, great, if you can get us literally 100 million in inventory, you're in. And it's like, eek, 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 now where do I go get that money?
Right.
Well, if you have a signed LOI with Walmart, that makes the game a lot easier for you. But you should try to anticipate and look at where you currently are as a company, what industry, what you fit in, where you are. I mean, really be clear on your numbers and how they fit with others. Is your industry going up? What is the future kind of trajectory? You need to pay attention to the marketplace. A lot of people don't, and then they're dead because somebody's innovated above them, or somebody got the funding to do what was needed to grow that company to the next level.
That's what I see also, where we're hesitant to take that risk, right? And so they back away, but then somebody else that's not hesitant just swoops on right by them, and they're like, I could have been, right? So how do you know when it's the right time to be able to do it?
Well, actually, there's a lot of excellent books that are out there, but Clayton Christensen, The Innovator's Dilemma, often says you cannot estimate a market that doesn't exist. So the disruptors, you can't really guess that way. But if you've really done your research and you've had your team do the research and you've talked to lots of people out there, that will help you mitigate the risk to you. And it doesn't have to be go raise money or run my business. I mean, if you've worked along with getting those relationships in place, it's a lunch. It's a lunch meeting and getting in front of some key people. If somebody is getting no, more than like 10 times, their story is wrong. They need work on their story, their pitch, their pro formas don't make sense. So, David Meister, who is a friend of mine that I work with, he was referred to me by the New York Angels as their top go-to person for looking at pro formas. Now, people will call me, oh, I had my Uncle Bob, who's an accountant, do my pro formas. Or, I've got this person, and I will make them have David go through their stuff. And it's like, $300 every single time he has found something, because he's able to look under the hood at the assumptions and to make sure all of those things match. And the other person I send people to is John Livesey, who's known as the pitch whisperer. He's probably the best person I know to work on pitch decks. And I've worked with John for a number of years. I had a little startup actually out of Idaho from a former Navy SEAL who was in Kuwait trying to save kids that somebody threatened to bomb the school. And he came back to the U.S. and said, most of these help the schools with safety are based on software, not real world incidents like he knew. Wow. And he had no background as a startup. We helped him, kind of finesse getting some advisors and such. And I sent him to John. John helped him with his pitch deck. I think it was $500, maybe $1,000, and helped him with the story behind that, and sent him to a family office in Salt Lake, and he got an offer for $1 million. And so I will meet people and I will say, if you're getting no's, I worked with a woman out of Park City, a doctor. had a interesting medical device, and nobody in Utah was interested. And I said, you got two problems. You're a woman and you're not LDS. You're not Mormon, and you need to get out of Dodge. And so I took her to Boston, San Francisco. We got $500,000 and the company sold for millions.
See, because you know so much about the inner workings of the industry. Yes, that's why everybody needs to get the book, though, because you've been around the block so much that you can see, oh, that's your problem. Whereas when they're in it, they have no clue, and then just feel like the whole world is against them. And that's the tough thing about entrepreneurship anyway. We just live in our own little bubble, and we just assume, like she could have assumed the whole world was against her, even though, like you said, it was just regional.
Yep. That one was in the wrong room, in the wrong room. And that's a good point. I need to write an article on that, like how you can tell exactly where you need to be. And, people with medical devices, bio companies will often go to regular angel groups. Mm-hmm. Wrong room. You need to go to the life science angels in San Francisco, or some of the incubators that are currently dealing with big pharma that would be happy to invest in you if they have a right of first refusal. So there's all kinds of ways around any kind of a issue. And I always say, go over it, under it, around it, or through it. There always is a way. It's really strategy. It really is strategy. If there's no lack of resources, that's it. It's strategy.
I love that. It makes it feel so accessible to everybody. So when you're being preemptive in your network, so you don't totally need funding now, but it's really good to go after the right people, so that way you have relationships. A, how do you go about doing that without distracting yourself from your current business? But B, how do you keep in touch with them in a way that feels valuable? Do you know what I mean? To make sure that you're not like, hey, let me just keep checking in and making sure the relationship's good and being annoying.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I do that by adding value. I got free tickets to Pebble Beach. I sent out to about 5 people, said, I'm not a golfer. I'm going to be there. Would you like to go with me? And just little things. Send them a book. I recently, on a flight home from New York, met a guy who has a couple of startups, very, very successful, and he's pulling up on his phone to show me something, and he has these 2 dogs. And I said, wow. And he goes, yeah, they're like brother and sister, and they're different colors. He said, this is mac and cheese, and this is chili pepper. Well, when I got home, I wrote to him and said, how's chili pepper mac and cheese? And tell your wife, Sarah, I said hello. Hope to meet you when I come to New York again. And that has resulted in him introducing me to the producer of Vice TV. So there I was, stranger in an airplane. And you just, you be you be real, you find out what they care about. Michael Milken said, what we care most about is our family. Our health, our wealth, and I add pets. Pets is a big one.
Huge, right?
And so if you just, find out a little bit about them and just reach out, was thinking about you, saw this, thought it may be valuable for your business. Is there anything I can help you with?
I've sat next to millionaires that I ended up interviewing on the show in airplanes going like, hey, nice to meet you. Dennis Yu was one of them. And I had no idea. We have like 500 mutual friends now, right? So you never know where you are. I guess the question, though, that I have is what tech do you, I have a big network and I'm trying to, who do I give value to right now? So do you use a software system like a CRM? Like how are you paying attention to what you need to do?
No. So if you only are focusing on 25 people, you literally can just do a simple little spreadsheet. And I do make sure that those top critical people that are important to me, that I add value, at least maybe once a month. But after you've developed a relationship, I hadn't written to Mark Burnett for 3 months when I sent him that email.
See, 3 months, though, is not very long. Years can go by but that's amazing.
Yeah. But if you add value, you really stand out to people. And if you care about them, their pets, their family, find out a little bit about what they're interested in. It really is simple. And in the first book, I talk about writing out who your current network is and then breaking them into industry or what their expertise is and making sure you're covered with everything that you might need. A recruiter, if you might be looking for a job, media contacts, different stuff like that. And if you just do that, and it's pretty, so one of the other things that I do is I subscribe to quartz.com and McKinsey. So these are highly curated, top of the world research. And I may find one article I can send to 10 different people that made their day.
Genius.
That made their day. It wasn't just junk.
Yeah.
It was a simple way to curate some high-end information and say, hey, I saw this. I thought this may be of value to you. And 9 times out of 10, they'll write back, yes, thank you. I was trying to figure out how to find something specific in this thing. Now, I'm a voracious reader, and so I'll tell people about books, but just little articles, little things like that, and it takes 5 minutes to send off that email.
I love this. And it makes it sound so simplistic, and yet we don't really, or I don't really do it, I should say. So when that list of 25, how often do you change that out? Like if you feel like you do have a pretty good, deep relationship, do they go on the follow-up after every 6-month list? Like what is the...
Yeah, it can certainly be. And, people change and where they're going changes, and it may not be a fit. They may drop off of your top 25 list, but they will always be there. And I tell people not to burn bridges because you'll be really surprised. In a year, you're going to say, geez, I should have followed up with Joe because now I'm doing X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
But I don't even have, I just use Outlook, and I do put who introduced me. Mm-hmm. And I can actually track back because I started seeing the pattern of people would say to me, how on earth did you get invited to the White House? Or how did this happen? And I started thinking, and it's always from somebody who referred me or a connection. And I mean, I've done things that would be considered, fairly simple for someone. Somebody reached out to me about being on their podcast, and I said, sure. And I looked at their background and found out they were kind of in design. Well, I just got introduced to the woman who's the chair of Parson Design in New York, one of the foremost firms. And I said, would talking to her have value for you? And it's like, yes. So you can just think about what could be of value to them. And really, when you just start practicing a little, Jamie, it comes second nature to you. And then it's fun. I mean, there's nothing I like better than to make things happen.
And question. Sorry to interrupt. I get super excited over this too. My dogs are barking in the back. They get excited too. So I do probably 5 at least introductions every single day because I love connecting people. But it's always an interesting thing. Like in the example you just gave, how do you know that other woman wants to be introduced to the podcast? Like the high end design person, how do you already know in advance that introduction will be valuable to her if it's a smaller end podcast and stuff? Because I feel like I asked both, and then it takes a while to get the thing back, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I don't even bother with that. I will just write and say, I got introduced to this person. Would you be interested in talking to them in the future? I don't do the introduction or say, would you like to talk? Would you like to talk? I mean, that takes up tons and tons of time.
Yes, I know.
and then you watch, and do those people then help you? If those people don't then help you, they're not in your network.
Okay, let's talk about this more because I love helping to the nth degree. And I know we have to start wrapping up in a second, but I find this very interesting. So I will go above and beyond and do introductions and be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then, but I have a problem asking. So that's why I was asking you those questions before. But I don't know that I don't go back and go, did they do anything for me? And I just keep giving and giving and giving. And then I get spread kind of thin. Give me advice.
I've done that.
Okay.
I've done that in the past and felt really burned out.
Yeah.
And so then I got better at being selective and also the level of value, because I could get people in the White House. I could do all kinds of stuff. And so I will do something simple and see what the response is. My first book, I didn't even know what a platform was. McGraw-Hill said, you've got to build a platform. It took me like 3 months to get anybody to interview me.
Wow.
And the lady who interviewed me for a blog, I was so thrilled. I made a batch of homemade chocolate fudge that you have to beat and set. I'll put you on my fudge list if you'd like.
I love
and
fudge.
I sent it to her, and she called me on the phone. She goes, Judy, 95% of people don't even say thank you, let alone doing something like this.
Wow.
And by the way, I know at least 10 other podcasters. Would you like to be introduced? So there you go. It's that generous. And then you find out that podcasters they need really good guests. So I will say to people, would you like to interview Kevin Harrington? Would you like to, I can set that up. Well, Kevin likes doing these kind of things. And so if you've not, had him on, I'll introduce you.
I haven't yet. Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, well, I will introduce you. And so that's really how. So,
and now I want to go, which podcast do you want to go on? Because I know a bunch of, So especially when you meet somebody that is more of a giver and willing to sort of go above and beyond for you, then it makes a lot more logical sense. Is that how you find the people that you put on the 25? Or is it like, how do you know who goes on the 25 on who's a giver backer? If that's a thing.
Yeah, well, you can tell that when you're developing the relationship. If they don't get back to you, they don't say thank you, they don't follow up.
You just drop them.
People, you want people who are going to have your back and have your future.
Yeah. Because I feel a desperate single person going, wait, let me keep helping you. It's sad.
Yeah. Well, and I did that when I was younger. I started life as a social worker, but I finally figured out one day, why am I helping everybody else? And I need to focus on my own problems, like take care of myself. Yeah. And so then I was, careful at who I spent a great deal of time on. And I try to be gracious. Everybody that writes to me, I'll send them an article or do something. But those 25 people, those are kind of near and dear to your heart people. And they are people that you can pick up the phone and call, and they'll call you back.
I have to redo my list of 20 because I read the book a long time ago and I loved it. And I was like, and I categorized and I have not come back to it. So
that's okay. And we'll do another call and we'll go through that.
You're so awesome. Everybody needs to make sure they get the book. But besides getting the book, because and you can get it on Amazon, crack the funding code, and judyrobinett.com. I have to ask the last question. What's one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of $1 million?
So I would find somebody who's at a level higher than you, whether they're a millionaire or whatever, and say, this is where I'm at. What other ideas do you have? Who else should I talk to? I would maybe go talk to a wealth manager that's really well known and say, give me some advice here. This is what I've done. Where could I go? And just get out of that comfort zone. Go visit one of those groups that you may not know about. And I'll get you some of those, like Renaissance Weekend is one of those highly curated groups that are invite only. The Churchill Club in San Francisco. Last time I was there, I met the CEO of LinkedIn. And so if you just do a little bit of effort, you can get invited to curated groups, which are very different than going to your local networking 101 meeting where everybody's broke.
Right? Seriously.
So
that's amazing and huge. And don't get me wrong, you're probably going to get a bazillion emails going, hey, Judy, what ideas do you have for me? Wait, everyone else doesn't need to email Judy. You can email someone else. Tell her that you did the work that she said, though. I'm sure that would be appreciative, where you actually took action. The reason why I asked that question is because most people will listen to this and then not do anything. So please heed her advice, people. See, she got invited to amazing, amazing places, and you can too. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Where can we find more about you, follow you online, other podcasts, all that fun stuff?
I'm on LinkedIn and I do have the website and my email is judy@judyrobinett.com.
Go you.
No E on the end. And I really do love to help people. Sometimes it'll take me a couple of days, like doing a podcast like this, then I'll get, 50 people will write to me, but I will get back to you.
That's amazing. Send her love and tell her thank you so much for coming on the show today too. I so appreciate having you on, Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that interview. And if you want to check out more amazing resources, I'm only curating the best of the best. Go check out eventualmillionaire.com. You can take the Eventual Millionaire quiz, figure out where you are in business and what you need right now. Plus, you can look at curated resources specifically for you on the new Start Here page. I'm so excited. Please join us. Please let me know if you need anything at all. I'm here for you. And have a fantastic day. Bye.